At the start of each year, county boards across Iowa hold their organizational meetings to elect a member to serve as their chair and vice chair. Here in Woodbury County, the past 3 years, board members have rotated who serves as the board chair and vice chair. And this afternoon, Mark Nelson was unanimously appointed as the new board chair for the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors. And David Dietrich was appointed as his vice chair. Nelson was appointed to the board in January of 2023 to fill Rocky DeWitt's seat after he was elected to the Iowa Senate. He was elected to his first full term in 2024. Dietrich was also elected to the board in 2024 for the county's District 5 seat that was previously held by Jeremy Taylor. Nelson has served the past year as the vice chair under Dan Bittinger. After the meeting, he recounted how his time as vice chair has helped to prepare him to serve as the board chair.
Well, there's a lot of things behind the scene that the chairman takes care of, and a lot of busy work. And so Dan was really good about tuning me in and plugging me into the stuff that he was working on, and so you get to see a little snapshot of that. And so I'm really appreciative, and that's the best way to have a smooth transition, is to get somebody or to help that next person in. And I sure hope that I can lead this group as well as he did and Matthew Young did before him.
The county's new vice chair, David Dietrich, was not at the meeting but called in, so he was unavailable for comment after his appointment. Chairman Nelson spoke on Dietrich's appointment as his vice chair.
No, I think Dave does a great job, and I think he'll be great. And I had a good teacher, and I'll be sure to plug him in as well, and so that if he wants to be chairman next year or after, that they'll be ready to do that. But yeah, Dave and I work really well together. You know, the two rural guys on the board, we have a lot in common, and so it'll be great to get to work with him even a little closer.
Nelson added that as chair, a big goal of his is for the county board to continue to increase public participation.